Some 600 former internees, mostly women and children, sailed for England in a converted meat carrier. My father and the other Britons staying behind in Shanghai stood on the pier at Hong Kiew waving to us as the Arawa drew away from them across the slow brown tide. When we reached the middle of the channel, working our way through scores of American destroyers and landing craft, I left my mother and walked to the stern of the ship. The relatives on the pier were still waving to us, and my father saw me and raised his arm. But I found it impossible to wave back to him, something I regretted for many years. Perhaps I blamed him for sending me away from this mysterious and exhilarating city.
Many people have said to me, what an extraordinary life you've had. Of course, my childhood in Shanghai was far closer to the way the majority of people on this planet in previous centuries and in the 20th century have lived than, say, the life in Western Europe and the United States. It's we here in our quiet suburbs and our comparatively peaceful cities who are the anomalies.
JG Ballard's novel, Empire of the Sun, about a boy adrift in war-torn Shanghai, is one of the finest English novels to come out of the Second World War. In that book, Ballard, previously known for his science fiction, addressed his own life and the mysterious sources of his writing. On the day he publishes the sequel to Empire of the Sun, a highly personal book called The Kindness of Women, Bookmark takes Ballard back to Shanghai for the first time in 45 years.
I describe Empire of the Sun and The Kindness of Women as semi-autobiographical, which they are. I mean, many of the events that took place are straightforward transcriptions of what actually happened to me. My first intact memories really date from 1937, when the Japanese invaded China and all of Shanghai except for the international settlement. And there was tremendously bitter fighting in and around the city. I don't ever remember being frightened. I think it was because we lived very protected lives as the children of Westerners in Shanghai. If I was moving around the city, as it were, officially, I traveled everywhere in my parents' car with a chauffeur. And unofficially, of course, I was always pretending to go and see a friend who lived in Amherst Avenue. And I'd ride on my little bike. I'd ride all over Shanghai in the most extraordinary way. I don't know whether it was the sort of magic of childhood that gave me safe passage, or a sort of built-in arrogance of a Westerner who took for granted that he wouldn't be harmed.
To understand the fighting that followed, we must know something about the city of Shanghai itself. Situated near the mouth of the Yangtze River, it is the biggest city in China. As the largest seaport in the Far East, it dominated the commerce and foreign trade of China. And through its great docks and channels passed most of the wealth of the Orient. In Shanghai, truly the East met the West.
I felt a surge of excitement on entering Shanghai. To my child's eyes, which had seen nothing else, Shanghai was a waking dream where everything I could imagine had already been taken to its extreme. The garish billboards and nightclub neon signs, the young Chinese gangsters and violent beggars were part of an overlit realm more exhilarating than the American comics and radio serials I so adored. My father called Shanghai the most advanced city in the world.
This is 31 Amherst Avenue, as was the house in Shanghai where I spent my childhood. Coming back to Shanghai for the first time since 1946 has been a very strange experience, and of course the house is the strangest of all. It's because I spent my entire childhood here, and I really came to something close to adult life here. So it is a strange experience. I mean, I can't keep trying to think what would have happened had the war not taken place. I would have gone on living here, and probably would have gone on living in Shanghai. So I have I see around me here a sort of alternate life that I never actually managed to live because of the war.
Time had stopped in Amherst Avenue, as motionless as the wall of dust that hung across the rooms, briefly folding itself around Jim as he walked through the deserted house. Almost forgotten scents, a faint taste of carpet, reminded him of the period before the war. For 3 days he waited for his mother and father to return. Every morning he climbed onto the sloping roof above his bedroom window and gazed over the residential streets in the western suburbs of Shanghai. He watched the columns of Japanese tanks move into the city.
It was very strange walking into my old bedroom on the top floor of the house, because that still has its original blue paintwork. And I recognized the little bookshelves where I kept my books, my copies of Chum's Annual and Boy's Own Paper and all my American comics, and the bathroom attached to it. It was like a sort of time capsule, really, that I'd stepped into after all these years.
So much of ordinary life today, I mean, is driven by the most peculiar psychological forces. And in the case of my own fiction, there is an attempt as well to try to understand the sort of changed nature of fiction and reality that constitutes our world.
Of all the places of wonder, the Great World Amusement Park on the Avenue Edward VII most amazed me. It contained the magic heart of Shanghai within its 6 floors. A vast warehouse of light and noise, the amusement park was filled with magicians and fireworks, slot machines and sing-song girls. A haze of frying fat gleamed in the air and formed a greasy film on my face, mingling with the smell of joss sticks and incense. Stunned by the din, I would follow Yang as he slipped through the acrobats and Chinese actors striking their gongs.
All my characters spend their time constructing personal mythologies which can sustain their inner lives. My characters tend to be solitary.